You're watching UATV News. My name is Inna Kosinska. Good evening. Economic growth and investment attraction. A comprehensive plan for the transformation of Ukraine was discussed at a visiting meeting of the Servant of the People faction, which took place this weekend in Truskavets. The President of Ukraine also took part in it. What topics were raised at the briefing, my colleagues will tell.
Development of Donbas infrastructure is one of the key moments of reintegration of temporarily uncontrolled territories. 2 new airports will be built in Donetsk and Lugansk regions. They will become an alternative to those located in the temporarily uncontrolled territories. The military does not allow the opening of the airport in Mariupol. They say it's not safe.
Для чого ми, наприклад, будуємо?
Why are we going to build a powerful infrastructure in Donbas? To bring investors there, and so that people, first of all, people in Donbas, know that they are important for the state. People in the temporarily occupied territories, when they cross the contact line, can see the difference. Volodymyr Zelensky also commented on the resignation of the chairman of the Parliament of Ukraine, Dmytro Razumkov. The Servant of the People faction plans to launch the procedure for recalling the speaker from his post and has already collected a sufficient number of signatures. He was not even invited to take part in the visiting session. According to the president, Razumkov should have supported the party in the fight against the oligarchs.
Партія має мільйон питань.
The party has a million questions. I heard them yesterday. Million questions to the chairman of the parliament. Not to the speaker, first of all, but a person who was delegated by this team. Today we all understand that he is not a member of this team. As for the head of the executive committee of the National Council of Reforms of Ukraine, Mikhail Saakashvili, who was detained in Georgia. According to Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine will do everything possible to bring him back. The president also added that he didn't know about Saakashvili's intention to go home. He considers this decision to be wrong because he represents the Ukrainian state structures. Georgian ex-president Mikhail Saakashvili was detained in Tbilisi on the 1st of October. He hasn't been in the country for 8 years and went to support his party in the local elections that took place the day before. 4 criminal proceedings were opened against Saakashvili in Georgia. In 2 of them, about beating and murder, sentences were passed in absentia for a total of 9 years in prison. 2 more cases, in particular on embezzlement of funds, are in the court. Reported by Nick Starkov, Anna Isaikina, UATV News.
Nord Stream 2, military security of Ukraine and the situation in Donbas. Official Kyiv believes that these are related issues that need to be discussed in the Normandy format. As Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said in an interview with Interfax Ukraine, now negotiations in the Normandy format are being conducted exclusively at the level of advisors to the leaders.
After Merkel's visits to Moscow and Kiev, 2 rounds of consultations and 2 video conferences took place. The topic of gas was not discussed at them, but it directly puts pressure on the negotiators from outside. Ukraine believes that Nord Stream 2 and the military security of Ukraine, the situation in the east of Ukraine, these are directly related issues, so we are in favor of linking these issues and their discussion. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, in an interview to Interfax Ukraine.
7 regions of Ukraine meet the indicators of the orange zone of epidemiological danger, the Ministry of Health reported. In these regions, the dynamics of hospitalizations increased and beds with oxygen are occupied. In the meantime, almost 34,000 people were vaccinated over the past day. More than 5 million Ukrainians have already got a full course of immunization. Other 7 million got first jab. The Ministry of Health calls for vaccination as this is the most effective way to protect oneself from COVID-19. Optimistic, pessimistic and moderate. Such possible scenarios for the development of the situation with COVID-19 in Ukraine were considered by the World Health Organization and the National Health Service of Ukraine. Chief State Sanitary Doctor of Ukraine, Deputy Minister of Health Igor Kuzin, said that now the country is moving according to a moderate scenario, but the situation could change quickly.
We have 2 or 3 reserve hospitals in every region. Now there are about 40,000 beds. If the situation worsens, up to 70,000 beds can be deployed, and taking into account reserve institutions, up to 90,000 beds. But we must understand that with a workload of 70,000, the healthcare system can no longer adequately provide urgent medical care. That is, problems may arise with planned operations with the treatment of heart attacks, strokes and other diseases. Therefore, the Ministry of Health today calls on everyone to vaccinate in order to prevent this. Chief State Sanitary Doctor of Ukraine, Deputy Minister of Health Igor Kuzin, in an interview with Focus.
Medical salaries will grow next year. The money for this increase has already been included in the draft state budget. This was announced by the head of the Parliament's Committee on the Health of the Nation, Medical Care and Medical Insurance, Mikhail Radutsky.
In a year, this is an increase in the minimum wage. From the 1st of January, it is $740. From next year, $920. This is the minimum. This is not the average, but less than which it will be a violation of the law if the doctor receives it. As for pharmacy, this will be an expansion of the affordable medicines program.
Ukrainian labor legislation by European standards. The Verkhovna Rada in the first reading passed the bill that will protect the rights of employees, expand the power of labor unions and make relations between an employee and the employer more transparent. Our correspondent found out more about which rules and guarantees are in the draft law. Olena has two higher education. Many years she had been working as a chief executive. Her last company did not survive the quarantine, and for more than a year, women couldn't find job in her field. For many companies, for some reason, it is critical if an employee who has sufficient work experience, already of a sufficient age, for instance, about 40 years old, then there is already a certain barrier to find a job. The problem of ageism really exists in labor market in our country. Olena got several denials in employment, and there were hints that employers were looking for a younger person.
Дискриминация при приеме на работу – это когда потенциальный.
Discrimination in hiring is when a potential employer does not pay attention to the professional qualities of the applicant, but selects personnel according to other criteria: age, gender, skin color, religious beliefs, and so on. Moreover, there are many such discriminating ads on job search sites. Literally, during 15 minutes on one of the sites, I found a dozen such vacancies. The most often Ukrainians are faced with age and gender discrimination.
Sometimes there have been moments when initially you are guided that you will not be formalized. That is, in spite of the fact that this is a violation. I got refusals. I was told that I'm young. They even said that you will soon may give birth, so there is no sense for us to hire you.
During my life, there were refusals in employment, but I don't want to talk about the effects.
However, the Ukrainian labor market may soon get rid of its discriminating vestiges. The Bill on Labor Relations Regulation prohibits an employer to refuse in employment of any criteria other than professional. It is designed to protect the rights of employees in other details as well. For example, during mass layoffs, the employer must warn the team and consult with the labor union and the unemployment fund.
Цей фонд безробіття має бути готовий.
This unemployment fund should be ready to accept, provide retraining vouchers, find jobs for these people who are leaving a large enterprise. So these mass layoffs, in fact, are the procedure that does not exist in Ukraine for now, but is stated in this bill. Another rule of the draft law is about employment contracts with freelance or part-time employees. It will indicate in particular the length of the working day and the right for vacation.
Such a concept as a short-term employment contract is introduced. This is fine. This practice, let's be frank, exists. But as it is bureaucratized, many people work in the shadow. They cannot get any social guarantees, and it is normal. On the other hand, we cannot pay taxes for such employment relations.
In addition, this bill was also elaborated to make the rules of Ukrainian labor legislation closer to European one. Special attention in the document is paid to labor unions.
Indeed, in European countries, the role of labor unions is huge, and the employer interacts very clearly with these unions and in any labor disputes that may arise between the employee and the employer.
The governmental bill on amendments to certain legislative acts of Ukraine to strengthen the protection of workers' rights was supported by MPs at the first hearing. Now the document has been prepared for the second. Reported by Elena Shustova, Valery Bakos, UATV News. The most ambitious renewal of the fleet of suburban and regional trains was announced by Ukrainian railway company Ukrzaliznytsia. The company announced a tender for the purchase of 80 electric trains. World train manufacturers from Germany, Poland, the Czech Republic, as well as the Ukrainian Kryuki railway car building works were invited to participate in the procurement. The auction will be held in early November. Cooperation with the winner of the tender is designed for 5 years, and train deliveries are planned in batches until 2026. Now the fleet of electric trains is 90% worn out, so it is critically important to renew it, Ukrzaliznytsia stressed. Real names, real stories. The first literary festival started in New York, Donetsk region. Musicians, poets and writers from all over Ukraine met in the village located just 5 kilometers from the contact line. Our correspondent saw what happened as a result of such cooperation.
This is one of the first jobs. This is my husband and me. In the future, we will breed chickens.
Resident of Ukrainian New York, Olena Topalova makes reeled dolls. There are more than 50 in her collection.
The first batch that I made, I presented it to the school, in the library, in the council. In the club there is my very first works. All these dolls are my favorites. In each doll is my soul.
Olena presented her products at the New York Literary Festival. She says such events take place in their village rarely.
I'm proud that this youth managed to create such a holiday. We really miss this.
These children's books will be presented at the festival by the serviceman Olena Mokranchuk. She wrote them in the army.
My colleagues came from home. They said the children were asking and I didn't know what to tell. Therefore, there was such a book, Aliska, a real fox, which we really had at the front.
The organizers invited to the festival not only writers, but also artists, musicians and historians from all over Ukraine.
In fact, there is a cultural life here. Pictures are being painted, people are playing violins, children are writing everything for our competition. It somehow brings them closer. By the way, I'm happy that all this is happening, that people communicate.
Master classes were organized for young citizens of New York. Children sculpted cartoon characters from plasticine and took part in the soap bubbles show.
I'm a resident of New York. I came here to have some fun. It is very beautiful here. There is a lot of joy and you don't want to leave.
An essay competition in search of real stories were organized for high school students in New York. The prize for the 5 winners is a trip to Kyiv and Lviv. Reported by Nick Starkov, Olena Hramova, Evgeny Karmazin, UATV News.
That's all for this hour. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook pages. Thank you for staying with the UATV channel. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.